We have a few more seats right there, too, if you want to come in. Waiting for it. Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Horan, Aunt Martha, my aunt. And we're here today to celebrate her life and share some stories and catch up with one another. But just for sake, there's a lot of people here from different parts of Martha's life. Can the Las Vegas friends raise their hands? Okay. Now, how about the family? Okay. And the Iowa contingent. There we go. You're kind of still Iowa. So we're going to share some stories. I want to bring up Martha's daughter, Julie, to start the program for today.
Welcome, and everyone, thank you for being here today. I'm Julie Ryan Crom, Martha's oldest daughter, and on behalf of my dad, Doyle, and my sister, Sue, and my little brothers, John and Dan, I'd like to thank you. We really appreciate your kindness and sympathy over the last few months. Many of you know that my mom organized top 10 lists at the end of each year with her favorite movies and books. So today, I'd like to share with you my own top 10 list. So let me present to you my top 10 life lessons from my mom, Martha Horan Ryan. Number 10, life is about showing up. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here today. For my count, over 13 states represented, folks from both coasts and especially the heartland. Number 9, always be prepared with a good supply of books. When we were growing up on the farm in Iowa, my mom planned the trips to the library like tactical missions. We even had a special bookshelf in the kitchen where we put the library books when we brought them home. And in her retirement, one of Mom's favorite hobbies was going around to garage sales and picking up books and then redistributing them to her friends and family and schools and firehouse. So we brought some of them today. They're on the table back there. Please help yourself. We'd love for you to take them home with you. Number 8, look it up. Now, this was back in the days before Google when we were growing up, so Mom was sending us to the good old-fashioned dictionary. Number 7, write it down. Make lists. Be organized. This is especially important if you are a farm wife living 30 miles from the town where you are dispatched on an urgent mission to get replacement parts for farm machinery that's broken down and it's planting season. As long as you're making the trip, have your grocery list so you can pick up your groceries while you're there. Number 6, this one is actually a sewing lesson. If you screw it up, rip it out, and sew it again. You can always find a way to fix most of your problems. Number 5, let it go. Throw something away every day. Let go of stuff. Number 4, find a good husband. Smart, thoughtful, and with a sense of humor. Preferably an Iowa Stater. A lesson that both Sue and I took to heart. Mom found her great husband her very first week at Iowa State. I want to acknowledge my dad, Doyle. 55 years of marriage. Together you created a family we can be proud of. As a team, you were exceptional role models. Number 3, it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Mom was 49 when she went back to graduate school. Mom and Dad moved here to Las Vegas when they were 53. I'm sure I'll never fully appreciate the learning curve that my mom went through when she transitioned from a rural community to an urban school district. Number 2, this is for the family. Of all our worries, great and small, the greatest of them all are those that never happen at all. Number 1, my number 1 life lesson I learned from my mom. Make hay while the sun shines. Practical advice on a farm, but also an important life lesson. Let's seize the day, today. Let's share some good memories and have fun. Thanks again for coming today.
Welcome Ruth Hamby, who's going to come up, a good friend of Martha. There she is. From Iowa, and she's going to say a few words too.
Homer, my husband and I were newlyweds when we first met Martha and Doyle at the Ruth and Robert Wagner home. And Renee Wagner and Dan Ryan were both babies at the time. And Doyle and Martha would tell of Dan being able to climb anywhere, and one time they found him on top of the refrigerator. Now, not to give reference to anyone's age, Dan, but this is an indication as to just how far back the Ryans, the Wagners, and the Hambys go. Martha and Ruth were the first new friends. Martha Ryan and Ruth Wagner were the first new friends that I had met when I came to Brooklyn. Martha gave a luncheon and invited all the Ruths in town that she knew. And it was myself, Ruth Wagner, Ruth Manette, Ruth Rowdybush, and Ruth Kinnaman. And I believe it was the Kinnamans that owned the Brooklyn Chronicle at that time. And Martha took her home economics seriously. We enjoyed her delicious meals many times over the years. She enjoyed the sewing projects with her daughters and her nieces. When they came to visit, she would tell us about those. And one time we left our children, Carrie's about 10, and Stuart was about 6 years old, with the Ryans over a weekend while Homer and I went to a veterinary meeting. And we inadvertently left Carrie's clothes locked inside our house in the basement hallway. Martha dressed her in Susan's somewhat larger shirts. And Carrie was not a happy camper on that occasion. And I remember Dan saying, Stuart, he was cool. Yeah. As the Ryans, Wagners, and Hambys' friendship developed, they organized a bridge group. We 3 couples, and the first couple to join us were the Butlers from Holiday Lake. Shortly after that, they moved, and Bob. And then the next couple to join us was Bob and Deanna Rowe. They were teachers there in that community, and they were with us for a little while, and then they moved. And each couple would take a turn at hosting and serve dinner in the evening. And Bob and Deanna moved to Victor, and our next couple for bridge was Connie and Ron Evers. And we 4 couples became lifelong friends. And we occasionally bring into remembrances some of our New Year's Eve parties. Martha was a very experienced bridge player and usually kept score. Homer and I never learned to keep score, as we hadn't played that much. She was really patient with us, although at times I could detect her ire if we should make a not-so-bright move. And when irked, Martha would take a deep breath, put her elbow on the table, her hands like this, run her fingers through her hair, and she'd give me that look of, are you there? I have never heard Martha ever utter a word of criticism to anyone about or about anyone unless it was about a politician, and usually a Republican. I'm not a person, I'm not particularly interested in politics, but she and Homer would discuss their differences and still manage to remain friends. She was a patient, non-judgmental teacher with her students. I know that because I was a substitute teacher and I taught along beside her, and she truly cared for their well-being and was concerned that they learn the necessary tools for getting along in life. She was a wise, wonderful friend.
For those of you who haven't met Martha's oldest son, John, I'd like to introduce you to John. He's going to come up and say a few words as well.
I'm going to talk a little bit today about my mom, the teacher. 3 years ago, I listened to NPR a lot, and they tell you, use the day after Thanksgiving, interview somebody. So I did that with Mom a couple times. And 3 years ago, we talked all about her teaching career. So a little bit easier for me to do this since I could listen to it and remember what she had to say. And I asked my mom why she became a teacher. And I guess her siblings are partly to blame because she says, well, I was the oldest. I was teaching from day one, the siblings that she had. And also that 4-H, her involvement in 4-H led her to teaching. And that was something that she knew from a pretty early age that that's what she wanted to do. She also liked to say that she taught in 6 decades and 2 centuries. So I'm going to go through the decades. All right? Decade 1, 1959, 1960. She taught at Guernsey High School. And for the uninitiated, Guernsey is the G in BGM. Our schools consolidated many years ago. But she is fresh out of high school, 22 years old. Fresh out of college, correct. And Guernsey had 29 students, and she taught home ec, English, and science, and she also directed the school play. Now that would have been fun to go back and see that. And that was the last year that Guernsey was a school. So let's move to decades 2, 3, and 4. She was a substitute teacher at BGM and then also some other schools from 1960 to 75. I think she was busy with some other things from that time period, and that's 4 kids and being a farm wife. And then from 1975 to 86, she was a home economics teacher at BGM, which is where me and my siblings all went to. And we had the experience, I think all of us, of having her as a teacher. And so that was an interesting experience. I don't remember too much that I learned. I think I learned how to sew a button. That's about it. It was pretty cool though when they had games, on Friday or Tuesday night. You could go to the home ec room and eat dinner there, which was pretty cool. I remember my classmates giving me a hard time about Mrs. Ryan says you have to pass the salt and pepper shaker together. They were all annoyed at that. I think they were picking on me at the same time. Some comments, after she passed, I saw on Facebook, several students talked about how patient she was. And, I never would have learned to sew without Mrs. Ryan. Let's go to decades 4, 5, and 6, 1986 to 2000. And my sister alluded to reinventing yourself. And, I guess, F. Scott Fitzgerald's, routinely misquoted, with his, there are no second acts in American lives. Well, I would say that my mom had a pretty big second act. And, as she said, she switched to special education, got her master's degree in 1989, and that's one of the things she talked about, for teachers out there. If you're going to go to school, get that master's degree. Do the work. You might as well get all those credits for that. She did a practicum at the Eldora Reform School and in Iowa, and then she taught special education in Brooklyn to 1990. And then, again, as my sister said, they made the big move to Las Vegas. And that was a pretty big move. And I remember actually going, I was living in California at the time, and actually sat in on a couple of her classes at Rancho and then at Mojave High School. And I didn't really, I kind of sort of knew what Las Vegas was about. I would come here on the weekends and visit. And I saw the kids and how she interacted with them, and working with special education kids, that's very challenging. You have to be patient for that. But then years later, I moved to Las Vegas, and I got to know what parts of town are the little bit rougher parts and what parts are the nicer parts, like Summerlin. And Rancho and Mojave are not in the best areas of town, and I don't know if people realize that. I know that a lot of parents that get stationed at Nellis Air Force Base won't even, they won't even think about base housing because they don't want their kids to go to those schools. And it says a lot to go from rural Iowa to teaching in a challenging environment. But speaking of second acts, many of you know I'm on second act now, and I'm 49, kind of like my mom was. And my second act is to join the family business. Sorry, Dad, I wasn't cut out for a farmer. So, and as you know, I've become a teacher. And, it was a big decision for me, and I had some good conversations with my mom about it. But I did some substituting last year in the rougher parts of Colorado Springs. And you can put some big quotations on that. And I had a couple days where, I don't know if I thought I was going to be like the Michelle Pfeiffer, helping the troubled kids, and I'm such a good person, I'm going to do that. But those were long, difficult days, as a substitute teacher. And I remember calling back home and saying, at the end of the day, these kids really need some help, but I'm not cut out for it. And she gave me a good pep talk, telling me about, hey, substituting's different. Maybe you're not a middle school teacher. Maybe you need some more mature kids. She was definitely right on that. But I guess more than anything, it really gives me a real appreciation for what she did, because everybody thinks they know what teaching's about, because we all were students for at least 13 years, maybe 17 or 20 if we have master's degree. But you kind of do, but you really don't. And I can say that with some authority. I really appreciate, more now what my mom did. And, just talking with some people today, they talked about how she has a heart of gold and, has always put the kids first. So when I did my interview with my mother, I closed it with one question. And I'm going to try and play it. If it doesn't play, her answer, I've got it quoted here, but we'll see if you guys can hear it. No. You guys are lucking out. I do have this on audio, though, if anybody wants to listen. I asked my mom, would you do it all over again? Any regrets in your choice of profession? And her response was, I just feel very lucky that my life has turned out the way that it did. Like I said, I always liked teaching, and I feel very lucky that's what I ended up doing. Thanks.
I never thought, John, I'd hear you compare yourself to Michelle Pfeiffer. That's outstanding. I'd like to introduce you to Martha's youngest, Dan. You want to come up?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. One of my first memories of Mom is of a snowstorm. It was just the two of us in our little VW Bug. Normally I had to sit in the back, but for some reason we were going to Grandma's, and it was just the two of us. And I was in the front seat without a seat belt, let alone a child safety seat. We were driving to Grandma Horan's in winter, about an hour and a half drive. I think I was 5, and that would make her 35. The snow was light when we left, but as we drove on, it got steadily worse. Buoyed by my blind faith in Mom, I was oblivious to any danger. The road to Ottumwa is a 2-lane highway. By the time we got to Watch Here, we could barely see the road. But it was too late to turn back now. As we approached the narrow trestle bridge, Mom said, "I need you to pray, Danny." I still had no sense of the danger we were in. "Okay, Mommy, what prayer?" "The Our Father." "I don't know that one yet." "Well, how about Hail Mary?" "I know that one." And so the two of us prayed as our little VW Bug chugged its way through inches of virgin snow, hoping that the headlights coming toward us would slow down enough to let us pass. We continued praying until we neared Ottumwa, where snow-plowed roads guided us to Grandma's. Mom grew up Catholic and went to Ottumwa Heights Academy, a Catholic high school. One day, a Jewish friend offhandedly said that Catholics never read the Bible. My mom's reaction? "Oh, yeah?" And she subsequently read it cover to cover. She went to Iowa State University, where she met Dad at a mixer at the St. Thomas Aquinas Student Center their freshman year. It's always kind of hard for me to imagine my parents dancing. They once went to a dance where the performer was, of all people, and I still don't believe this, Louis Armstrong. After Mom passed, one of Mom's roommates, Julia McCutcheon, shared with us the following anecdote. Her morning always began by rolling out of bed to her knees for a morning prayer, which then merged into her making her bed. Then she was up for the day. Mom would later go on to teach catechism, and of course she made us all go to church whether we wanted to or not. But for Mom, faith was more than prayers, memorized or otherwise, much more than doctrine. She was nothing if not practical. She believed in the value of work. Laziness wasn't an option on the farm. There were certainly days I wish it had been, but I'm forever grateful for the good habits that she and Dad instilled on us. She would later instill them in the special ed students she taught in Las Vegas. Not only did she set up the Rattler Cafe, a work-study environment where students learned important life skills, she also taught them basics, such as how to fill out a job application. With all this emphasis on work ethic, you'd think she was a Republican. But of course she was a Democrat. Her father was a longtime county supervisor, and she worked on his campaigns. She once saw Harry Truman give a speech at the back of a train on his famous 1948 whistle-stop tour. At Iowa State, she was the vice president of the Young Democrats. She was fiercely loyal to public schools, and Iowa State in particular. I have fond memories of listening to Iowa State football games with her on the radio. Iowa State's heartbreaking tie to Oklahoma in 1981 stands out. We would have won if Alex Gifford hadn't missed a 23-yard field goal. Iowa State gave her opportunities. To help make ends meet, she worked at the library. Even though later she would become a classroom teacher, she never abandoned the librarian's ethos. And I truly believe this, that being a librarian was a core component to who she was. She was a sharer of knowledge. She never did it in an ostentatious way that drew attention to herself. It was more like, hey, here's a book I think you might like. Here's an article about something you've shown interest in. It was only as I grew older that I realized that not every parent brought home literally sackfuls of books from the library each week. That not every child had their own personal librarian. When I showed an interest in World War II, she brought home accessible, age-appropriate books that I devoured. When I showed an interest in computers, she brought home computer magazines that opened up a whole new world to me. Mom was an information hub. She did it the old-fashioned way by keeping track of everybody's interests, not just her immediate family, but extended relatives, friends, neighbors. She wrote countless letters and later on emails. Adopting new technology was something she started early in life. In college, she interned at the local television station, and this was, very early on, one of the first TV stations in Iowa. So she worked in television. And one of the programs she helped produce taught viewers how to use a slide rule. Despite her part-time jobs, money was tight in college, and at one point she feared she would have to drop a home economics class because she couldn't afford the requisite tools. When she notified her instructor, he lent her the money for a pair of scissors and other sewing materials. She was so moved that she kept that pair of scissors her entire lifetime, having them sharpened as needed. She taught English and a few other subjects in Guernsey, as John alluded to, for 1 year. The new school district was going to consolidate the following year, and they might have offered her a new job, but her doctor, Dr. Hickerson, was on the school board, and he informed them that Mom would not be needing to teach because she was pregnant. And so, she couldn't possibly, didn't consult with Mom, so things were different back then. She gave birth to 4 children in the span of 7 years. Little wonder that she would later say that the 60s were a blur. Mom went back into teaching, but as people have mentioned, as she neared her 50th birthday, she was informed that budget cuts were eliminating her position. And I was, I think, a junior or senior at the time in high school, and I was there with her, and she took the news really hard. I mean, she didn't know what she was going to do. She applied for jobs. I think she even took a civil service test. She really didn't know what was going to be in store. But, she never gave up on her job search. She had faith in herself. Opportunity and hard work brought her to Las Vegas, where she taught for several more years. When she retired, she went back to her roots, coordinating library rooms here in Sun City. And now, if heaven has a library, no doubt she'll be at the front desk helping the other angels out. The other day I noticed that author Jane Smiley had a new novel that takes place in Iowa, and I know Mom would have loved to read it. At first I was saddened, but then I remembered that she's in heaven now, where she's already read it and every other book to her heart's content.
Now I'd like to introduce you to a very impressive young woman, Martha's granddaughter, Ryan White.
Taking the extra step. My grandma was the type of person who always took the extra step. In addition to being a farm wife and mother to 4 children, she was a wonderful teacher. Teaching was not just something she did on weekdays from 8 till 3. For Grandma, teaching was a passion and a lifelong vocation. Grandma was the type of person to not just donate food to the food pantry, but to take the extra step. For example, When she found out that they gave away free turkeys at Thanksgiving, she created a flyer with instructions for cooking a turkey and included recipes that used the leftovers. She cared enough to take the extra step. Reading was a passion of my grandma's. There was a daycare center at one of the high schools she taught at, and she created bookmarks that emphasized the importance of reading to your baby to give to the young parents. Instead of judging them for their choices, she tried to improve their lives and the lives of their children. Even after retiring, she continued to donate books to local schools and libraries and encouraged people to read. I especially enjoyed Grandma reading to me when I was younger and discussing books with her when I was older. Grandma noticed needs of those around her and took the extra step to meet those needs. The cafe that she ran at a high school she taught at baked goods to sell each morning. She knew that some of the students came early to help because they didn't get breakfast at home. She would always say, "Oh, this piece didn't turn out very good. Why don't you just eat it?" So they could save face and not go hungry. Grandma taught me to cook something new every time she visited, and I enjoyed the time we spent together as much as the skills I learned. Grandma taught hundreds of students to sew in her years as a home economics teacher. She took the extra step to teach me how to sew by always saving patterns for me and suggesting projects for us to do. One of the last things we did together was sew curtains for my bedroom. She was always very patient with me and gave me expert tips she learned from her years of experience. When I was in 6th grade, I wrote a paper about Grandma and interviewed her for it. One of the questions I asked her was, "How do you want people to remember you?" She told me that she wanted people to remember how important family and teaching were to her. When they think of her, she wants them to give a book to a school. My grandma was a very humble, kind, and thoughtful person and was an influential role model in my life. Someday I hope to be half as selfless as her and to continue passing on her love of reading. Grandma always took the extra step to help those around her, and I think it's something we can all strive for. She would be happy for that to be her lasting legacy.
I'd like to ask Martha's youngest brother, Charlie. It's your turn.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad everybody else was using notes because I got no shot. I'm a little bit organized, and first off, I think that sympathy to Doyle, Dan, John, Sue, and Julie, and spouses, family, my brother, and my sisters. Didn't quite expect this. A couple of clerical points. Martha grew up a Horan, not a Horan. Phil and I kind of changed that, and so if anybody's offended, tough. We go by Horan these days. Secondly, in the obituary, you'll note that I am listed as Charles, no spouse. Sue Horan, my former spouse, is here. A tremendous friend of Martha's, and thank you for being here. So anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about Martha and I. I'll probably do a blog. For those of you who, I have 7 followers, by the way, and that's on a good day. It's not increasing either. And actually, I started thinking about this several weeks ago when we said we were going to do this, and I knew I wanted to speak, and I started to write a few things after a while. I don't do these kinds of speeches well. When I had my 2 daughters married, I could not sit and write, and I have an outline on some paper, and I just go. So that's what I'm going to have to do today. But I probably will do a blog about some of the things that Martha did for me. Understand there was 12 years difference, so I didn't know Martha's, anything before teenage years. And since the move to Vegas, it was less because of the proximity. So my life with Martha is kind of a bell curve. And there was a lot in the bell. And I will share that on the blog. And it may or may not be interesting, but I'll try to get through it. And I have truly appreciated the thoughts from John and Dan, from Ryan and Julie. I spend a lot of time on my bike thinking about thoughts because I really don't like biking that well, so I use the time to think. And it's interesting that Julie is the first grandchild, and Martha was the first child. And I get these thoughts. Kate, my daughter, who is here, and I get hung up on family. And you spoke as from your mother, your grandmother, and me as brother. But we go back to Phil and Margaret, my mother and father. And I think of Martha and the lineage that nobody here probably remembers except my siblings is my grandma Boblin's, my mother's mother. And Grandma Boblin's and Margaret and Martha, it's the same. These family determined women who were devoid of self-interest, devoted to family, and not hung up on all of this stuff. It's remarkable. I thought this morning. It's remarkable here in Vegas where everything is about stuff, and we're here celebrating a woman who didn't care about stuff. And I thought that comment that whoever made that was really cool. So I don't go to movies anymore, but there was a comment in a movie someplace that I even forget who said it. We live in interesting times. I have said we have an interesting family, and this goes back to Margaret and Phil on the farm, our farm. And we have a legacy that goes on, and you talk about reading and writing and the kind of things that make people successful. And that's, I think, that, Martha was, everybody has said the same thing. I look at my notes and I say, well, somebody's already said that. And look at this. Already said that. And so I guess I'm here to say that Martha certainly accomplished all of those things. As a brother, she was extremely good to me, which is remarkable because I did not know her growing up. She came to me later in life, stayed with, was great to my kids, asked for nothing. That was a thought I had. Martha asked for little, gave much. And I mean, that's pretty cool. She's a writer. My siblings out here sucked at writing. I remember Martha letter every week to Mother, and I was the one at home. Phil, no letters. Margaret, no letters. Rosie would write the letters and never mail them. And that kind of indirectly helped me. I wrote Mother every week because I knew that would get Mother happy. So I found it was interesting over the years that Martha became a Starbucks person. And you could always count on Martha at Starbucks early in the morning up at Tahoe, which is cool. And the nearest thing I will say about politics is Martha and I both enjoyed the New York Times. Me for the crossword, her for everything else. So I am so gratified to see so many people. Those of you Las Vegas friends that I do not know, thank you for the friendship that you have shown to her and to our family, to Doyle. And I'm pleased that we've had a successful life. She left successful people in her wake, and we just need to, I will close with one of my favorite sayings on life, and it goes back. We're a family that's a little bit into sports, and Daddy, your grandfather, my father, was a baseball guy, and he loved the guys with a little bit of sense and humor. Satchel Paige was an old pitcher from the Negro Leagues. Don't look back; they might be gaining on you. So we all just need to keep going. So thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
And introduce you to one of the other elders, my dad, Phil Horan.
Hard act to follow. There's a theme of what everybody's talked about Martha, and unbeknownst to me, I think all of us kind of wrote our notes independently, but Martha was very proud and loyal to her family, even as it stretched from Doyle and her children and her grandchildren, and onward to what we have grown to refer to as the Horan clan. And as the eldest of the elders, and over the years, the siblings got to refer to as the elders, and the elders always got to pay the bills whenever we had gatherings. But Martha was very proud of her role, her determined role as the matriarch of the Horan clan. And I can always remember Martha, again, following the theme as a teacher. She was very, very proud of the history of the teachers in the Horan clan, going back to the Horan school that our grandfather built down the road from our farm, where Martha and her younger sister Marg actually went to the first 2 or 3 years of school at the Horan school. And as a little side to that, if you ever want to find the Horan school, just Google it, the Horan School, Wapello County, and you will get the latitude, longitude of the Horan School in Wapello County. She's particularly proud of John's recent decision to become a teacher. We talked about that several times, and she was really proud of that John was going to share his skills in caring for people and going into the family business, as John referred it to. And it really is a family business when you talk about the Horan clan, because there are a lot of teachers in that group. Over the last 10 years, Martha and I had lots of conversations about teaching. I actually did a little bit of substitute teaching, and Martha was always giving me tips on classroom management. And she always added value. Believe me, I used some of those tips. Martha always maintained contact with her extended family. Over the years, our family, my siblings, have grown to love Lake Tahoe. And fortunately, I get to live there. But over the years, as members of the family would come to Lake Tahoe and visit, Martha and Doyle would show up to maintain that contact, because we were pretty spread out. We were all over the country. She supported the family in other ways. Again, another theme, whenever she would come to visit, guess what she would bring? Books. And these would be personally selected books, not just random books. Here, Phil, I think you'd like to read this book. Or, to all of us. I mean, she was very thoughtful in that regard. She would also show up with other goodies from time to time. I remember I came to celebrate her birthday in Las Vegas one time, and she showed up at the hotel with not only books, but with a cooler full of beer and sandwiches. She took great pride, and she participated in every wedding of the nieces and nephews. Wherever they were, she participated. She was always there. I personally felt her love and support several years ago. I had a bout with cancer, and my first day in the hospital, Martha was there to support me when I started my treatment. I'm convinced that her love and prayers was part of the reason that I recovered from that. Over the last 15 years or so, I guess, when we have our family gathering, there's been one ritual that we've always had, and that is a picture of the elders. And I think today, when we have that picture of it, that's why I really miss her. So she will be greatly missed. Thank you.
An Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
We're going to try our luck with the audio visuals. You get to participate again. You get to sing. On the back of your program are the words to one of Martha's favorite songs, and we hope that you'll join in singing it. On behalf of the Ryans, they would like you to join in a light snacks and some beverages, and they encourage you to stay and share your stories about Martha. And if you could too, please remember to sign the guest book at the end. And thank you all very much for coming. And take a book, please. Yes.